So guys, I want to review AEW Dynamite for April Fool's Day. And I do want to mention that I think with AEW and with every show that they should have a mission to accomplish. And I think that that's also very important with any like professional wrestling program. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Like Monday, I went to Monday Night Raw in Madison Square Garden. Because if those who don't know, I just need to go to I just need to go to Wembley Stadium now, and I would have hit all four professional wrestling arenas. Arena Mexico, Tokyo Dome. I was there like 2 weeks ago, Madison Square Garden, and then Wembley Stadium. I'm hoping to go to that. But with WWE, their goal this week was ultimately to build WrestleMania bigger and better because it's the show of shows, really. And I think with Dynasty, like I said, that I am concerned there's only four matches, and um, they have Collision on tonight. And I looked at the spoilers because I'm not able to watch tonight, but it doesn't look like there's any more matches. And I don't want to see a lot of AEW shows where it's like, oh, well, here's a pay per view. We don't want to build as much matches as possible. We got to throw 8 or 9 matches at the last minute, because that's not real. That's not good, really. So I felt like the mission wasn't accomplished in the show. Like, I don't feel like they've added enough matches to the card. They only had one more match, and I think that the mission tonight should have been more matches. So I was able to write down notes in my handy dandy notebook. So the first thing that happened was that Tony Schiavone was talking to the crowd. There was a segment about, hey, MJF and Kenny Omega are going to sit down, and they're going to have their talk about um, their talk about like the world title and everything like that, really. And then Pyro goes off. We think it's a malfunction. Power goes off again. We think it's a malfunction, and we think it's some fuckery. And then Chris Jericho comes out, and there was also something where he just like basked in the reception, and I said to myself, he's probably doing a homage to what happened to him a few years ago when he was on Monday Night Raw, where like he did that segment where he actually came out, he hyped the crowd, he got them cheering for him, and he said nothing. Just to work the crowd. I said, "Oh, are we gonna get that?" And then he said, "I'm home," and that's that. So at least we got something. He's trying to be a babyface now. But I am a little concerned because I think there's a lot of just concern about this. What's going to happen with Chris Jericho? I think one bad thing that can happen is that he can face Bandito again, and that cannot happen because they did that the last time. GT, get the fuck over it. I think for him, if he really wants to make an impact, he should wrestle Anthony Bowens, and he should be retired by Anthony Bowens, just to kind of build up a new star. Find somebody on the roster, like maybe Takeshita or other people who could be big stars, really. There's Brody King, and Brody King, if I was booking Brody King, he would have to beat every, like, former world champion. And I think he should beat, I think him and Chris Jericho could be a good match, but the problem is that, Brody King's more in the powerhouse class. So it's almost like, it's like maybe a younger version of Vader going against maybe an older version of Ric Flair almost. But I think that if Chris Jericho is back in wrestling, like try to get something out of it. Try to build maybe new stars or whatever, or maybe some people who could be bigger stars. You can even do Chris Jericho versus Kevin Knight or something like that. But but I think that like utilize Chris Jericho, give him a couple more matches if he has it in him. I just think that I think it adds, really. I still want to see him do Learning Tree or just some stupid ass gimmick or whatever. Really, I think that he should have some like maybe a bit of a retirement tour, and he should wrestle people and try to build up some people. I think that that's the best way to utilize him. Um, but if he kind of goes back to what he was doing with Bandito and the Ring of Honor champion, then that's a step in the wrong direction. Or his like New York City Jackass gimmick that he was doing last year. That's not where he should be. Um, the next thing I want to say is that they cut to Will Ospreay and he ambushed John Moxley. So they're fighting in the drink container, like in the beverage storage. So they're on like Coca Cola pallets, Sprite pallets. They were on like beer cans, like the beer kegs, that they fill up, and it was kind of like a real kind of cool and stuff like that. I kind of felt like it was a little jarring, like why are they cutting to the segment, really? But it kind of makes sense with what happened later tonight. And then also too, MJF and Omega had to get down to the ring, so they cut to Omega and MJF in the ring, and really, with the paraphrase Kenny Omega, somebody needs to cut you down a peg, and I'm the one to do it. And then MJF says, you know what? I found out from the doctor's office that your intestines can explode anytime. Your career and life is a ticking time bomb. And after I beat you, the crowd will be embarrassed and realize that you were that you would have been better off dead. So like you see the can you see like the MJF hitting below the belt, but I also think that, you know what, even though he said like ticking time bomb or your stomach explode any second, um, I'm okay with MJF saying that because we all know that he lies sometimes, or he may just hyperbolize a little bit because, you know, his character is supposed to be an asshole and a sociopath, so he knows how to hyperbolize. But I really don't think, you know, we're gonna watch somebody that is wrestling and his stomach could actually explode any second from a surgery. If he was in that condition, he would not be allowed to wrestle. I know some people said, "Oh, the physics are off in that because you shouldn't be saying, um, oh well, he gets hit the wrong way. You know, he's gonna die a from a stomach ulcer or whatever." Really, no, I think MJF is talking like that because he wants to he wants to create some tension. You know, um, so what happens is this pisses off Kenny Omega, like, wish you were dead. And then Speedball Mike Bailey comes out. He calms down Kenny Omega because remember, the rule is that if they fight each other in the ring, the match is off. And Speedball doesn't want to see that happen because he's like, you know what, this is what MJF does. He pulls on strings and he antagonizes people, and that's how he gets his advantages. Really, he'll just have he'll sit at home, until Double or Nothing. But MJF like Speedball starts talking. MJF kind of says like, you're a pissant, and then they have a match later on tonight. And I'm proud of MJF for doing this because I remember like a lot of times in AEW, I think one of the bad things that happen in AEW is that they either do repeat matches or they do a lot of champions not wrestling a lot. And what I mean by repeat matches is that you had MJF and Will Ospreay in Little Rock, Arkansas, and then you did them at Wembley Stadium. You had Adam Cole and MJF for the World Championship in Washington, D.C. I saw that. That was excellent. And then you did that at Wembley Stadium. So they kind of had that bad pattern of, or you did Ricochet and Will Ospreay in a match, then you did Ricochet, Will Ospreay, Takeshita in a match. I think they did Ricochet, Ospreay, Mascara Dorada in a match. But the point of it is that when you are booking a show, you don't want to kind of have people wrestle 2 or 3 times and then say, "Oh, we're going to wrestle again on pay-per-view." Save it for the pay-per-view. And then also this elevates Speedball by wrestling the champion, really. And this is kind of like what AEW needs to do, really. Like, make the people who matter. If Speedball, Mike Bailey, and Kevin Knight are big investments, have them actually, face MJF. Even if they lose, they look stronger in the feet and everything like that. So I do appreciate this, and this is what AEW needs to do, and that's kind of what AEW was founded on, was giving people opportunities. I don't think that Speedball is the right person. He reminds me too much of Hong Kong Fu and the Karate Kid. He's too quirky for me, but he's too quirky and of a character to be a champion or to be taken seriously as a champion. I think there's better people on the roster that should be in the spot, really, like Anthony Bowens, but yeah, I'm happy that Speedball got that opportunity. The next thing is that there was the first match, and that was Omega, Brody King, Jack Perry versus the Demand. Jack Perry does a top rope moonsault onto everybody. Brody King and Leota both go through the timekeeper table. Omega pins Ricochet with a one-wing angel. And again, I think with a lot of the AEW matches, they're not really into them because it's kind of very predictable of who's going to win, who's going to lose. And it's also kind of like a thing too, like maybe when you go to a live event, you're more captivated by the matches, but when you're kind of like at home, you're like, oh, well, we know how shit's going to go, bro. We know that Omega's going to win because obviously he's contending for the world championship. To have, it's okay to have unpredictability, But I also think that Ricochet needed to be pinned. You know, it's a way to kind of punish him a little bit for his online controversy. I mean, I know we're past that at this point, but it's kind of like a little bit of a rib, you know. The next thing is that Edge and Christian arrive with chairs, and and then also like backstage when they were talking to Renee, you didn't hear the crowd really. So this is a big moment for the crowd. Oh my God, Edge is probably the most famous wrestler from Canada, but you don't hear like a crowd reception. Like if this was like, you know, in WWE, you would hear that, but they don't do it here. You know, what the fuck, really? Um, but the other thing too is that they did like there's the look for FTR, and two things happened. Christian was about to attack Renee with a chair. I didn't like that. That felt way too 48-hour film project, dumb comedy. But I understand that part of Edge and Christian is dumb comedy. And then what happened was they go to the locker room with two members of the Don Callis family. I believe it was Rocky Ramiro and one of his friends. And this is kind of good in a way because this is the F word, not fuck, foreshadowing, because we don't know what's going to happen in what we don't know what's going to happen in May with Anarchy in the Arena. It could easily be Team Edge and Christian versus Team FTR and the Don Callis family. It could be Darby Allin with Andrade and Konosuke Takeshita versus the Don Callis family. It could be the Triangle of Madness versus, um, Harley Cameron and Willow Nightingale. Like, we really don't know what's going to happen for Anarchy in the Arena. You could have a mix of people from who are feuding with each other, really. Or you can even do something like you can have the Demand and FTR, and then you could also have, you know, you could have members of Don Callis family. You could have members of Darby Allin and some of his friends. Like, we really don't know. So I think Edge and Christian in this spot is good, feuding with hitting members of Don Callis family, because again, we kind of don't know, what's going to come after this, and if they're going to set up Anarchy in the Arena, um, and you're going to have like Edge and Christian and members of Don Callis family, this is a good foreshadowing, really. So, and also to the Anarchy in the Arena, that's one of the biggest draws of the Double or Nothing pay per view. So I really just hope that. I really like this foreshadowing here. And AEW has been doing a lot better at foreshadowing or trying to be a little unpredictable, or like maybe story's going to go one way or a feud's going to go one way. We're going to swerve people. And I kind of like that because that's what they need to do, because unpredictability or this seems interesting. Are they going to go that direction? Are they going to go in that other interesting direction? That's the way to do it. The next match was Will Ospreay versus Pac. So what happens is that Will Ospreay goes down to the arena. Pac ambushes him, hits him with a brainbuster on the rampway before the match starts. And there's a couple things about it that obviously the segment earlier in the night definitely set this up, really. So I appreciate that. The next thing is that Pac is obviously a bastard. He's a heel character. He was hitting Ospreay in the neck over and over many times in this match. They put a chair around his neck at the end of this. This is good psychology. This is good storytelling. I appreciate this because that's what. Because again, when you think of Pac and Ospreay, you think of epic, high flyer shit, really. But no, that's not the way to do it every single time. You have to do things a little bit differently. You have to do things that are appropriate for the story you're trying to tell, really. And I felt that this was a very mature match. They both were not about doing high flyer moves. They're both about telling, okay, they're having a feud. Osprey's um, on the warpath with the Death Riders, and through that he wants to get to John Moxley, really. And then because Osprey attacked John Moxley, his boys are like, hey, you know what, we gotta you're not gonna attack our leader, really. So there's some cool moves in the match. Um, Pac does a flat-footed moonsault into a DDT. Um, Osprey does the Styles Clash, and Osprey wins, and it's kind of controversial in a way. Like, I would have had Pac win this one, because obviously you can't always have good guys win. You can't always go the predictable route. And then honestly, I think that they should do a storyline where Pac becomes the leader of the Death Riders and kicks John Moxley out. Like, I think that would be where the next thing to take the Death Riders. or you have Claudio in charge of it, you know. But this could have, if you had Pac win and Pac became in charge of the Death Riders, and they kicked John Moxley out to kind of do something interesting with that story, I would think that would be like a more interesting direction. But we do the predictable thing of Osprey wins. Pac, who has a lot of potential, a very great look, who could talk in the microphone. He remains as Moxley's lackey, and he's probably going to be in the background for the next couple of months or half a year. Um, they put a chair on Moxley's neck. They put a chair on Will Ospreay's neck, and then John Moxley um, says something like, you know what, I just wanted to give you a warning about what would happen next time, and then he walks away, like kind of gives him like, you know what, I'm gonna spare you. But that makes no sense really, because didn't they like try to pour bleach down? Didn't they try to pour like chemical down um the throat of Orange Cassidy? Like they would usually take things very very far, but this kind of doesn't work for them because I think in the beginning they were taking things far. It seems like they're getting a little soft. They could have easily said something like, Tony Khan told me not to do it, and he said that the Death Riders are gonna be disbanded if I take it too far. Or he could have said something like, "Hey, you know what? Tony Khan is talking about putting me in the Owen Hart tournament, but if I cross a certain line, he's gonna take me out of it." Like there could have been like a little bit more like dialogue or setting other things up for why he spared Will Ospreay. And I think those would be actually reasonable. That would be more reasonable than just, oh well, I wanted to show you mercy. I want to give you like a strike one, um, and the next one strike three. The next thing was Triangle Madness versus Mina Shirakawa, Windsor, and Jamie Hayter. I know they set up to this. They set up this match on Collision, but I really didn't care about it. Like 'cause we all know the Triangle Madness usually loses a lot, really. So it was like Anna Jay got pinned again. They could have done something different by having the villains win here. So again, something very predictable. I said to myself, it's 9:30. What the fuck? They have, I believe, if I'm correct, they have like four more shows. They have three more shows. They have Collision, then they have Dynamite and Collision next week, if I'm correct. So they have three more shows, and there's only three matches announced for the card. Now we got four matches, and this is like 9:30. I was mad because I was saying, hey, you know what? I don't want Dynasty to be a show of like they did last year, which is like, okay, let's throw 8 or 9 matches. Let's have Tony Khan announce matches on Twitter. Like I said, they had an excellent show on Collision last weekend, but they could have made so many matches. They could have said, well, the word dynasty means people want to start their dynasty. People want to start, people want to just start the year strong, or, you know what, even though, even if they didn't get a shot at Revolution, there's people who want to start stuff. So I was saying to myself, again, when I was saying, like, when you look at what happened at the Collision show on Saturday, you were like, hey, we look at Kevin Knight stood out, Ace Austin stood out, Ciampa stood out, so many people stood out. I was like saying, okay, imagine if they set up a bunch of matches and imagine if they set up a bunch of matches and they didn't do that during that show, and that would have like elevated that Collision episode. But here I was like, what the fuck? It's 9:30. There's no matches and there's no additional matches, and the show is almost like really almost like less than like almost like 13 like 12 days away really, and there's no fucking matches really. There's no additional matches announced, and then they announced it's going to be Andrade versus Darby Allin, and this was bad in a lot of ways because what happened is that they confused the fuck out of a lot of people because there's some people who are reviewing it who don't know what's going on in that match. A lot of people heard that if Darby Allin beats Andrade, he faces MJF for the championship. But what was said on Wikipedia was that if Andrade wins or if Andrade wins or if Darby Allin wins, the winner is going to face MJF at Double or Nothing. And I think that that's going to be a very interesting match. I would predict that Darby Allin would win, and I'm predicting Andrade will win because I think Andrade versus MJF is a more interesting match. Andrade's been in WWE. He does a lot of great stuff. Let's try a new direction, really. Let's not like do because Darby Allin's it's kind of very predictable, really. So I'm predicting I'm predicting that Andrade. I'm envisioning Andrade to win. I'm praying that Darby Allin doesn't beat Andrade, really. Because it's like the same old people, same old shit. And then also you got to worry about, oh, well, if you're gonna do Anarchy in the Arena, and then you have Darby Allin in the main event. Darby Allin's associated with death matches, so if they do a death match at Double or Nothing after Anarchy in the Arena, that's too much. Or if they say, hey, Darby Allin's kind of associated with death matches and crazy stuff, what's going to happen when he has a match with MJF and he doesn't have that? People are going to still think about death match stuff and maybe just like cross association, really. So I'm hoping that Andrade wins so we can do something a little bit different with Andrade. We can do something a little bit different with AEW. Let's have new people like Brody King versus MJF. That was a great option. Hangman versus MJF. It comes full circle. I'm okay with that. But I was not okay with the Texas Death Match because they overdo hardcore matches. Kenny Omega versus MJF. Even though I think Swerve and MJF is the better match, because nobody really remembers the last time Swerve and MJF faced each other. I'm okay with Kenny Omega Kenny Omega and MJF because last time they faced each other was like 3 or 4 years ago. I remember seeing that at the Mohegan Sun. Really, I won a bunch of money that night, um, but yeah, I just hope that when they think about opponents for MJF, they try not to be predictable, and they also don't have predictable matches. Like honestly, like if MJF faces Darby Allin, I want that to be a regular match. This should not be Darby Allin doing crash dummy shit. Um, it works just to show diversity, really. John Cena has the attitude adjustment, but if he was always putting somebody through a table with the attitude adjustment every single show, um, it wouldn't really stand out. The main event was like MJF versus Speedball Mike Bailey, and Omega was a special commentator. Reminds me a lot of Monday Night Raw, but that's a good thing, really, because that builds characters. That says, hey, you know what, we Omega is watching MJF. We know that MJF takes things too far. Look, he beat down Bandito. Then Brody King came in the picture. So this makes sense for Kenny Omega to watch his boy, really, because he knows how dastardly MJF is. It was a good match, won a good duration. Speedball does a second rope moonsault out of the ring onto MJF. MJF hits a pile driver and then the heat seeker for the win. Won a good duration and made Speedball look good. And I think overall, I would say too that, as I said, that it was a really enjoyable episode. The positives outweigh the negatives, but I would say that if I wanted to be a hard ass, I would say that this was kind of like an F for me in the sense that they should have built way more matches to Dynasty. And I kind of worry that they have a show at Collision tonight and they're not going to build more matches to Dynasty when that's what they should be doing. Because it's like, as I said, that every pay per view, everything that they have to do in AEW has to matter. Especially since you're going to Wembley Stadium and that's like I think 80,000 seat arena and they got like maybe like 30,000 now. You got to just keep kind of really just adding to it. I'm not sure. I have to check again how many people are going to the Rogers Arena. I'm not sure what the maximum capacity is, but I think they have like maybe over 7,000 people last time I checked. But not having matches announced, and you have only 4 matches now. They've announced like 33% of matches really, whereas the other 66%. Like, 'cause they usually do like 12 matches. So I kind of say to myself, that's very bad, and that's weakness of AEW, and that's what should have been worked on tonight. This is like their primary show. This is the show people watch most of AEW. and there's no other matches, or you didn't even do segments with people on Collision who are at Collision say, hey, let's build up a match, let's talk about this. Kyle Fletcher's injured. What if you had Ace Austin and Tommaso Ciampa and and Mark Briscoe in a triple threat for the TNT Championship while he's injured, and then you have Ace Austin versus Kyle Fletcher in the future, and trios titles and tag team titles. So and trios titles and other things like that. I just think that there are a lot of opportunities to build to more matches, or to look at the whole roster and say, hey, we should do something a little different. Um, we should do something a little different. Let's push some new people. Let's put them in the Dynasty card and like let's give them some momentum, story, experimentation for the rest of the year. But they didn't do that really. Build more matches to Dynasty, and I'm hoping tonight, maybe after like midnight, after like Collision airs, that maybe on Wikipedia that was like 6 or 7 more matches. They have 6 or 7 matches in total instead of like 4 matches in total. Really, we need more matches for Dynasty.